Presented by Church Tech U, it's the ProPresenter Show. On today's show, how to add displays in ProPresenter 7. Hi, and welcome again to the ProPresenter Show. This is the show where I teach you all about ProPresenter. My name's Paul Allen Clifford. And before we get started, if you're just a little confused about how you go about adding displays or which displays you'd add under what circumstance, go ahead, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, click the little bell icon, you know, all that fun jazz. So this is remarkably different in ProPresenter 7 than ProPresenter 6. And this is a tutorial that I did before, but I think that it's worth revisiting it and just clarifying some stuff about how to add displays and just what display type can be used for what circumstance. So let's head over to my computer and we will take a look. So here we are in Pro 7, of course, and in earlier versions of ProPresenter, you would get to the display layout by going to ProPresenter and then settings or preferences, depending on the operating system, and then screens. So if we go there, you'll notice this doesn't look anything like it did in Pro 6 on back. Well, what you really need to do is click Configure Screens from here. That will take you to this screen. Alternatively, you could go to Screens and then Configure Screens right here, or this keyboard shortcut on Mac. It's Option Command 1. So either way, that'll take you there. So let's just click Configure Screens and you'll notice it's exactly the same as it was. So couple of things about this dialog. First off, right here, up here, where this button is exactly the same as this button right here. And what that does is, with it turned off, it shows the computer desktop. I want you to think of it that way, not show and hide ProPresenter, because it only works on screens that have a desktop, like an HDMI screen that is connected to the computer that the computer sees as a screen in its operating system preferences or settings, right? So that's the only thing that does. Same thing down here for stage. Same thing for these buttons here. They only affect screens that have a desktop. So right now it's in show desktop mode. Notice it says show or hide stage screen. Actually not the best way to think about it. So show or hide computer desktop if it has a desktop. So for most people, you're probably thinking, well, what other kinds of screens would not have a desktop? Well, in Pro 7, we actually have 3 or 4 other kinds of screens. So the first is if you're using Blackmagic Design hardware, so a Decklink card or an Ultra Studio box, one of those two will not have a desktop. It'll show up in the Blackmagic desktop video software, but it doesn't show up to the operating system. And most software, unless they know about it, it doesn't show up there either. So you can't just drag a window from one to the other. So that's one that it wouldn't affect. Another that it wouldn't affect is a NDI screen. An NDI screen is a network screen where you can send the video from ProPresenter directly over the network to other computers and other software. But it can also be sent to other software on the same computer, whether you're on a Windows or Mac. Hey there, aspiring ProPresenter Pro. Are you tired of getting tangled up in tech trouble? Want to impress your congregation with mind-blowing visuals? Well, look no further. Introducing ProPresenter 7 training at Church Tech U, your secret weapon for unlocking ProPresenter's full potential. Join me as I dive into the world of captivating presentations, smooth transitions, and jaw-dropping effects. From beginner basics to advanced tips and tricks, I've got you covered. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. Visit churchtechu.com/free trial for a free month now. Did I mention it's free? And revolutionize your ProPresenter game. Your congregation will thank you. That said, there is another type that can only go between pieces of software on the same computer, and more specifically only on the same Mac, and that is a siphon screen. Finally, the last type of screen is a placeholder screen. So just with those thoughts in mind, let's click plus up here, and this is where we add screens. Now you'll notice that the first three, these are the three that the computer sees, and it shows you where it is here. So the built-in Retina screen on my computer, I'm on a laptop, so this is my built-in laptop screen. And on the left I have an auxiliary screen, and on the right I have another auxiliary screen. So this MeTV1 and MeTV2, those are the two auxiliary screens that I have connected to my laptop that are the ones that would be affected by the show and hide desktop buttons here and here. Okay, so if I click on this, you'll notice that this is the MeTV2 screen that is named Screen 2. If I right click on it, I can change the name. So let me just call that Audience, just to make it kind of obvious. This second screen that I have here, this is a placeholder screen. Last type of screens doesn't leave ProPresenter unless you're live streaming from it, but that's what this is. This is a placeholder. So when Pro 7 was first launched, the only reason you would use that is if you wanted to set up the same resolution screen at home and not actually have to plug in to your TV or whatever. Maybe you'd be at your office and you'd be creating presentations and playlists in Pro 7, and you didn't want to hook up to an auxiliary screen. You could have a placeholder screen instead. So that's what it was used for. Now there are a couple of other uses. You can make your own multi-view with the placeholder screen that never leaves ProPresenter. It just shows up right here. Or you can also live stream from a placeholder screen, again, within ProPresenter. So technically that last one would leave ProPresenter, but it's not going to any other software. It's not going anywhere else. It's just live streaming from within ProPresenter. So that's another thing that you can do with it. This alpha option, notice that it says DeckLink Duo 1 and DeckLink Duo 3. These are the Blackmagic DeckLink card. I have one of those connected. And this is another placeholder that I have as well. And notice that this one I have set up to be vertical. Any guess which one this is? Oh wait, any guesses whatsoever? No ideas. Okay, so that's what that one is for. I also have stage screens. The difference between an audience screen, and I don't want, some people have theological readings into what names are and stuff. Don't read anything into it. Renewed Vision just needed a name for the congregation and then the leaders. So to make it a little bit more generic, they called the ones that the congregation sees, whether they're the congregation that is in person or the the congregation that's remote, or maybe even a recording or somewhere else in the building, that is the audience, and the people that are leading, they get the stage screen. So doesn't matter if you call it a platform, a podium up front, whatever you call the area up front that usually the leaders are leading from or the musicians are playing from or whatever, that is a screen that tends to be turned backwards to the congregation so that the people that are leading from the front can see that. So those are the two main kinds of screens. Now, one thing that I do want to say is do not add a screen for your ProPresenter user interface. Don't do it, because that will cause problems. It'll cause, when you do enable the screen, it will be covered up by an audience screen or by a stage screen. So don't even bother to add that third type of screen in ProPresenter, the user interface, the part that you as the person running ProPresenter will look at. Don't bother doing that. If you need to move it to another screen, just click it and drag it over there. That's all you have to do about that. That one will always open up when ProPresenter starts, so you just drag it to the appropriate screen and deal with it that way. So now that we've got a list of all the potential types of screens, what screen would go for what, when you add a new screen, you click the plus button next to the type of screen that you want to add there. And then you should have a list of all possible types of screens here. Whether they're the system screens, the ones that have a desktop, remember, Blackmagic screens, those that work perfectly fine in ProPresenter, but to other software they're invisible, typically. Some software can see them, but it's an unusual thing. NDI, if you're sending it either to other software on the same computer or something else on the local network. Siphon, if you're sending it to other software on the same Mac as you're on, or a placeholder, which typically would be within ProPresenter itself, or you can live stream from it. So that's when you decide which of these you're going to do. Now, once you do that, first off, you'll notice that this resolution, it's in parentheses already. That is because that's the resolution of these built-in system screens. Well, I guess not built-in. This one is built-in. The other two are external. But that's the resolution that the operating system sees. So if you're saying, oh, I want this to be 4K, the computer doesn't see it as a 4K screen. The computer sees this as a 1080p screen. So this isn't where you change it. You change that in the operating system, whether you're on Windows or a Mac. Sorry, Linux people, there's no Linux version of ProPresenter. So although technically Mac kind of is, anyway. So those are the resolutions that are built in. If you want to change it, you've got to change that in the operating system for those three. Okay, next, when it comes to a Decklink Duo or an Ultra Studio box, either of those made by Blackmagic Design, again, don't read into that name. They're a secular company, so they didn't even think. Notice that we've got some choices here. So I can change between different resolutions here if I want to. So when I add a screen, I need to add one with the appropriate resolution. So I've got that. Now, same thing for NDI. And notice this has a finite list, but for NDI, I can actually make a custom size. So if something is a different frame rate or a different resolution, I could actually send out NDI in a range of sizes and frame rates. So depending on where you're sending it, perhaps it needs to be different than one of the defaults listed here. Siphon, same way. It has some defaults, but then you can do it custom. Placeholders, again, has some defaults, but then you can do custom. These bottom two aren't exactly the same thing. They're it says grouped in EdgeBlend, but both of those are a group of screens. So let me add a grouped screen here, and notice that because you would never be doing this during regular use of ProPresenter, you'd set it up ahead of time and then do it. That this, you might have to go back and watch it if you're curious. This did blink, and the reason is all the displays are refreshing based on that I've added a new screen. So notice that I have a 2x2 video wall here. So you could do this with 4 TVs and a 2x2 matrix like this, and notice for every one that you click on, you can change the output down here. So you could have 4 displays right here, but I'm not limited to a 2x2. You'll notice right here I can change this. So I could do a 2x1 if I wanted to, or I could do a 2x3 or what have you. So I can do that. Now, if I wanted to add an edge blended screen, I could go back here and select edge blend, or I can go right here and change this to edge blend. And you'll notice that then I no longer have the 2 rows. Two rows. I only have a single row with multiple columns. So right now I've got 5 added here. Most times I've seen people do 2 or 3, and the reason you do edge blending is if you have 2 projectors that you want them to mesh up perfectly, well, you don't just put them next to one another, you overlap them just a little bit. So that's what edge blending is for. You would click here to change the settings to get the blending just right. Ideally, there'll be 2 projectors that are exactly the same age with lamps that have been used exactly the same amount of time, and do it that way. With one thing that I failed to mention is if you're going to do a video wall, ideally you would want all 4 of those monitors, because it would be better to use professional monitors, although it is theoretically possible to do 2 TVs. You'd want them all made on the same day, if possible sequential serial numbers. So they were all made 1, 2, 3, 4 if you're doing a 2x2 video wall. So that way, if their color is going to match more closely. So that's those 2 types. There is another type down here, and you'll notice that I didn't tell you about that. Most of the time you're going to choose single, but for mirror, most of the time I would say this is not going to be something that you're going to want to deal with. Most of the time you would either use a splitter, also called a distribution amplifier, probably more correctly called a distribution amplifier, to take one signal from the computer and split it. They're very inexpensive, and they take the load of drawing the second screen away from the computer. So that's why I would encourage you to do that. The only reason I would do this is, one, if I was at a situation where I needed to mirror my screen and I didn't have a splitter with me, or 2, if I always wanted the same output from one monitor to also go to a live stream. In that case, then that would probably be a fine way to do it. You know, this one could be a system display, and then this could be NDI or Siphon. So that would be the other situation where I would imagine that I would use that. Now, if most of the time or some of the time I want them to be the same, I can do that elsewhere. But if it's always the same, then you might do mirror right here. Going back to this alpha display that I added here, let me first tell you the screen color right here, upper right hand corner, that is on a per screen basis, and this is the bottommost layer of video in ProPresenter. So it's on a per screen basis, the bottommost layer in ProPresenter, and this is the only place that you can change it. So you're probably going to set it and forget it. Perhaps from time to time you'll change your video configuration and you'll go into here, but in general this is the thing that most people, once they get everything set up, they don't have to deal with it for years, so they forget about it. Well, so that's where you would change the color. Something I'm doing here on vertical, oh, I guess I haven't changed it yet, is on these vertical monitors, what I've done is I have the color went to another screen here. Let me move that over here, the color picker. Yeah, here we go. So I like to set this to like just a color I would never want to see. And the reason that I do is when I fire up ProPresenter and my vertical monitor is on, if I don't see that color, I know something has gone awry. So that's why I use that color. It's not intended to ever be seen except when I'm setting stuff up. Another use case for that is sometimes people, let me go back to single here, they do a chroma key where they remove a certain color. Typically it's a shocking green, so you might want to set that up to that chroma key. I don't know that that's chroma key green, but let's just pretend it is. So set it up and set up the screen color, so that way if you did a clear all, it would not clear the background color. It would only clear all clears everything other than the screen background color. So that would be a good way, so your video switcher could always remove that, or the software you're using to live stream could always remove that. So that's a good other use for that. So just to show you what I said earlier, notice that's still that pinkish color and this is still the green color. So different screens have different background colors. This one has no background color. Same thing here. It could be black as well. Clear and black are going to look the same unless you've got the output overlaid over something. So that's an important thing to know about as well. Now let's look at these down here. So hardware, if you want to change what screen it goes to, just click the drop down here and look, that looks very familiar. So I could change this if I wanted to. Output target, typically this is going to be full, but it is possible to do, again, 2x1, 2x2, 3x1, or custom. So basically this would do the exact same thing as the multiple output up here, the grouped. So color, if we needed to tweak the color, typically this would be if you had two projectors and their color wasn't quite matching, or maybe one was off a little bit, you could tweak the color on it. Corner pinning, again, another great thing for projectors. You can change where the corner is, where each of the four corners is with X and Y coordinates, like Cartesian coordinates in math. And then alpha, I've talked about this in another tutorial, that enables you to send either with NDI it's one signal out, but it includes additional information for transparency and translucency, or with the hardware switcher, two video signals out, kind of like I have here on alpha, where one is the key signal and the other is the fill signal. Fill signal looks normal. The key signal looks like a black and white version, where sometimes some odd things are white and sometimes some odd things are gray and things like that. Basically, the video switcher looks at that and says, okay, any pixel that's black is transparent, any pixel that is white is opaque, and any pixel that's gray in the middle, the darker the gray, the more transparent, the lighter the gray, the more opaque. So it's a range of translucency there. So that's what that is all about. I will talk about this identify screens. Notice that it says what screen this is. So this audience screen is named audience. This is the hardware that's connected to my computer as the Mi TV2. It's 1920 by 1080 and 30 frames per second. If we go right here, you'll notice that this actually has two, and that's because I'm doing some funky magic here to make this happen. But I've got vertical 2 and placeholder 2, and 1080 by 1920 and 1920 by 1080. So some funny stuff going on there. That's one of the places I would check anytime you see configuration words on the screen. It's worth checking there. It should be the case that that clears out when you go out of the configure screens dialog. But if there was a bug or something and that's the kind of information you were seeing, that's exactly where I would look. So going back to configure screens, we're almost done. Notice that I can add a video delay on any of my screens that actually output to hardware. So either the system screens or the Blackmagic screens, I can do that. I can also click here to go bring up the test patterns, which is particularly helpful if we go to this test pattern, the audio video sync. So I can show the audio video sync test pattern and use that to help with my audio delay or my video delay and deal with that. So that is how you add screens in ProPresenter. It's kind of an overview, but it was still a bit of time. So I hope that you'll take that information and use it to get the most out of using ProPresenter for your church or organization. If you like this content, you'd probably like my ProPresenter 7 Quick Start course, so head on over to TDM.fyi/pro7 and quick. Give me your name and email address, and I'll make a login for you for free. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out and change eternity.